The faster we move toward the end of this era, the closer we come to the beginning. The trial humanity is collectively facing is essentially the same one Adam and Eve faced in the garden. The choice between obedience to the Creator and His designs, or to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Today, this ancient tree has taken on the form of artificial intelligence and its false promises. Hello, I'm Mark Mallett, and you're listening to the Now Word. Well, at the outset, it may seem odd that God forbade Adam to eat of this tree of knowledge. What is wrong, after all, with knowledge? Well, in truth, as a rational being made in God's image, Adam already possessed the gift of reason and the light of the divine will in order to discern good from evil. Rather, this tree existed, it seems, as a test of Adam's love and freedom, and whether he would respect the boundary that God alone determines good and evil, right and wrong. Let's turn to Genesis 3, where the snake in the garden who's tempting Adam and Eve responds, and he says, "Did God really say, 'You shall not eat from any of the trees in the garden'?" Well, the woman answered the snake, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. It's only about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, 'You shall not eat it or even touch it, or else you will die.'" But the snake said to the woman, "You certainly will not die. God knows well that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like gods who know good and evil." The woman saw that the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eyes, and the tree was desirable for gaining wisdom. Well, Lucifer, that snake, presents the tree as a source of hidden esoteric knowledge that, being banned, prevents humans from becoming like gods who know good and evil, he said. This is essentially the heresy of Gnosticism. It's reappeared throughout the ages under new guises, beginning in particular with idolatrous Jews who conceived the Kabbalah, to the secret societies of our day, like Freemasons, the Illuminati, etc., who believe they are a small group of elites who hold or will hold occult knowledge that will unlock immortality and a utopian future. Well, there's a direct parallel between the ancient forbidden tree, whose fruit Satan promised would essentially replace the need for God, and the artificial intelligence, or AI, tree of knowledge. "You will be like gods," promised Lucifer. Well, artificial intelligence gathers data from around the world as a kind of super search engine. As such, every person on the planet has the capacity for God-like omniscience with the click of a mouse. Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, said, "When digital superintelligence finally arrives and is generally available and generally safe, you're going to have the sum of Einstein and Leonardo da Vinci in the equivalent of your pocket." Meta recently introduced Hyperscape, utilizing virtual reality glasses and a groundbreaking technology designed to transform real-world spaces into photorealistic virtual environments. Well, while still in development, AI is now quickly allowing users to be quasi-omnipresent like God around the world. And finally, man is grasping at God's omnipotence in part, with the ability through AI to create images, video, music, etc. out of thin air by simply typing a few descriptive words. This has predictably taken a dark and egregious form. Sam Altman, CEO of ChatGPT, recently announced that adult users will soon be able to generate erotic content. That's realistic, high-definition pornography with AI-generated humans. That's ironic, given that the first thing Adam and Eve did after eating the forbidden fruit was to cover their nakedness. Well, that mankind has, quote-unquote, achieved the capacity for the deepest, darkest, most perverse thoughts to be transformed by AI into living, breathing images suggests that we are unleashing the very bowels of hell upon earth. As it says so presciently in Revelation chapter 8, verse 2, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a haunt for demons. She is a cage for every unclean spirit, a cage for every unclean bird, a cage for every unclean and disgusting beast." St. John is just trying to describe what he was seeing. Well, it doesn't take a Bible scholar to see how the spirit of Antichrist, if not the Antichrist himself, is beginning to rise like a foul stench in our times. He's the one who, it says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God and object of worship, so as to seat himself in the temple of God, claiming that he is a God. Kind of an echo, isn't it, from the Garden of Eden? Well, Yuval Noah Harari is an Israeli historian widely cited by political and tech elites. He's become the philosophical face of the godless Great Reset promoted by the World Economic Forum and backed by global leaders. His anti-Christian views perhaps best echo the voice of the serpent that once hissed in Eden. Declaring, he said, that God is dead and calling humans hackable animals, Harari writes, "Homo sapiens as we know them will probably disappear within a century or so, not destroyed by killer robots or things like that, but changed and upgraded with biotechnology and artificial intelligence into something else, into something different." He goes on to say, in seeking bliss and immortality, humans are in fact trying to upgrade themselves into gods. Well, Elon Musk is leading the way in the development of artificial intelligence and transhumanism, the merging of AI and technology with the human body. While still a ways off, digital immortality, as he calls it, is possible, says Musk. He said, ultimately you will have a whole brain interface that I guess is a sort of form of immortality, and that if your brain state is stored, you're kind of backed up on a hard drive. You can always restore that brain state into a biological body or maybe a robot or something. Thank you, but I'll pass. Well, Sam Altman is allegedly developing technology that could essentially read your mind, a power once reserved to God alone. And he and other billionaires are invested in tech startups focused on human longevity, the first stages of that quest for immortality. In the New York Post, it said that OpenAI CEO Altman, 39 years old, and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, who's 60, have shelled out millions in recent years to longevity labs such as Retro Biosciences and Altos Labs, respectively. PayPal founder Peter Thiel, 57 years old, forked over $1 million to the Methuselah Foundation, a biomedical charity that aims to make 90 the new 50 by 2030. So you can kind of see where these tech giants are going, such as Ray Kurzweil, Google's director of engineering, who is known as the prophet of digital resurrection. And he predicts the singularity, which is really superintelligence, the point where AI hypothetically surpasses human intelligence, he says, will allow us to transcend these limitations of our biological bodies and brains. We will gain power over our fates. Our mortality will be in our own hands. We will be able to live as long as we want. He said that back in 2005. Well, according to the World Economic Forum's founder, Klaus Schwab, we are in the fourth industrial revolution, which he says is the fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities. Again, in Genesis 2, it said, "You are free to eat," God said, "from any of the trees of the garden except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. From that tree you shall not eat. When you eat of it, you shall die." Well, just as eating from the original tree of knowledge resulted in death entering into the universe, the fruit of this new tree of knowledge of artificial intelligence also poses existential threats. In fact, over 850 people, including tech leaders like Virgin Group founder Richard Branson, Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, and prominent AI pioneers like Yoshua Bengio and Jeffrey Hinton, widely considered godfathers of modern AI, signed a statement calling for a prohibition on the development of superintelligence. CNBC reported that signatories of the recent statement warned that the prospect of superintelligence has raised concerns ranging from human economic obsolescence and disempowerment, losses of freedom, civil liberties, dignity, and control, to national security risks and even potential human extinction. Well, at the heart of their concerns is the imminent potential for AI to take control over itself and humanity. Jeffrey Hinton said, "So one of the ways in which these systems might escape control is by writing their own computer code to modify themselves." Dr. Roman Yampoliski says, they will turn you off before you can turn them off. Dr. Yampoliski says guardrails were published a decade ago for how to do AI right, but its programmers violated every single one. So he now warns that the efficiency of artificial intelligence will make human production virtually obsolete in as little as 5 years. He said, and I quote, "In 5 years, all the physical labor can also be automated. So we're looking at a world where we have levels of unemployment we've never seen before. I'm not talking about 10% unemployment, which is scary, but 99%. Well, it's precisely this preoccupation with efficiency at the expense of human development that led Pope John Paul II to warn of an emerging culture of death. In his encyclical, he wrote, in Evangelium Vitae, he wrote, "This culture is actively fostered by powerful cultural, economic, and political currents which encourage an idea of society excessively concerned with efficiency. Looking at the situation from this point of view, it's possible to speak in a certain sense of a war of the powerful against the weak. In this way, a kind of conspiracy against life is unleashed." Well, in that regard, the Vatican's recent document, Antiqua et Nova, a warning of the dangers of unethically guided AI, is clearly prophetic. It said, "As AI becomes more powerful, there's an associated risk that human labor may lose its value in the economic realm. This is the logical consequence of the technocratic paradigm. A world of humanity enslaved to efficiency, where ultimately the cost of humanity must be cut. Yet, human dignity and the common good must never be violated for the sake of efficiency. For technological developments that do not lead to an improvement in the quality of life of all humanity, but on the contrary, aggravate inequalities and conflicts, can never count as true progress." But Dr. Yampoliski goes much further. He warns that superintelligence will have the capacity to invent inconceivable ways to eliminate the human race. Well, Jesus said that Satan is not just a liar, but a murderer from the very beginning. Indeed, after Adam and Eve ate of the forbidden tree of knowledge, the first major fruit of their disobedience manifested in the murder of Abel by his brother Cain. Dr. Roman Yampoliski again says, There are a lot of psychopaths, a lot of terrorists, a lot of doomsday cults. We've seen historically, again, they tried to kill as many people as they can. They usually fail. They kill hundreds of thousands. But if they get technology to kill millions of billions, they would do that gladly. What an AI system capable of doing novel physics research can come up with is beyond me. Well, look, this is not a pleasant thought. I'm not delighting in writing it or speaking it now, but nor can it be readily dismissed as mere hyperbole or doom and gloom, as St. John Paul II shouted from the rooftops. With time, the threats against life have not grown weaker. They're taking on vast proportions. They are not only threats coming from the outside, from the forces of nature or the Cains who kill the Abels. No, they are scientifically and systematically programmed threats. This threat against life, my friends, toward the end of times is actually symbolized in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, where it says, "Then the dragon," again, that same snake from the Garden of Eden, "stood before the woman about to give birth, to devour her child when she gave birth." Well, it's becoming clear by the hour, at least to me, why heaven has announced through a multitude of souls that we are approaching the end of an era. We are a generation that in the name of progress is committing suicide. If God purified the earth through a flood when evil reached a crescendo, if he toppled the Tower of Babel as they arrogantly ascended toward heaven, how much more is this culture of death a candidate for divine purification? Jesus actually said to servant of God Louisa Picaretta, "Every 2,000 years I have renewed the world. In the first 2,000 years, I renewed it with the deluge. In the second 2,000, I renewed it with my coming upon earth, when I manifested my humanity, from which, as if from many fissures, my divinity shone forth. Now we are around the third 2,000 years, and there will be a third renewal. This is the reason for the general confusion. It is nothing other than the preparation of the third renewal. If in the second renewal I manifested what my humanity did and suffered, and very little of what my divinity was operating, now in this third renewal, after the earth will be purged and a great part of the current generation destroyed, I will be even more generous with creatures, and I will accomplish the renewal by manifesting what my divinity did within my humanity." At the beginning of this writing apostolate in 2005, I had a powerful experience in northern British Columbia, Canada, where I heard interiorly the words, "I have lifted the restrainer." I'm not going to go into it here, but you can read it at my website, thenowword.com. It's titled "Removing the Restrainer." According to Scripture, God has left in place a restrainer that holds back both lawlessness and the lawless one. But it is an apostasy, a rebellion from God's word on an apparently massive scale, that causes this restrainer to be removed, making way for this lawless one whom tradition calls antichrist. Again, this is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Thus, Sister Lucia of Fatima said, "Let us not say that it's God who is punishing us in this way. On the contrary, it is people themselves who are preparing their own punishment. In his kindness, God warns us and calls us to the right path, while respecting the freedom he has given us. Hence, people are responsible." Yeah, that's beautifully said. Years ago, French Catholic author Georges Bernanos warned that the danger is not in the multiplication of machines, but in the ever-increasing number of men accustomed from their childhood to desire only what machines can give. Ironically, in this kind of idolatry, machines can not only dehumanize, but enslave us. And here I recall the eerie words of Cardinal Ratzinger in 2000. He said, "The apocalypse speaks about God's antagonist, the beast. This animal does not have a name, but a number, which of course is 666. In the horror of the concentration camps, they cancel faces and history," said Ratzinger, transforming man into a number, reducing him to a cog in an enormous machine. Man is no more than a function. In our days, we should not forget that they prefigured the destiny of a world that runs the risk of adopting the same structure of the concentration camps, if the universal law of the machine is accepted. The machines that have been constructed impose the same law. According to this logic, man must be interpreted by a computer, and this is only possible if translated into numbers. The beast is a number and transforms into numbers. God, however, has a name and calls by name. He is a person and looks for the person. Beautiful. And so I ask, has mankind once again fallen into idolatry at the foot of the tree of knowledge?